Hi, I'm Scott for ediblemusic.com. There are a few ways to think about attenuation, and I'd like you to see how they kind of fit together in some really interesting ways. In one sense, attenuation just means to turn something down. So when you're adjusting the volume of your radio or adjusting the fader in your workstation or the clip gain, you're attenuating that signal by turning it down. You might have heard me talk about attenuation in reference to equalizers, or you might have seen attenuation on some of the equalizers that you're working with. And in that sense, it still sort of means the same thing, except it's just limited to a particular frequency band. So instead of turning down the whole signal, the attenuation of a frequency band will just turn down that section of the signal instead. In both of these cases, you might be attenuating in order to prepare the signal as it's going into another output. So there are these things called guitar amplifier attenuators. I have one back there actually. That will pull the load from the amp and will turn the volume of that way down so that the output is much quieter. And when you're mixing, you might attenuate a signal in order to prepare it to go into the next processing unit. So maybe you're attenuating with your EQ in order to prepare it to go into a compressor or a saturator or whatever you might have next. But attenuation also refers to things. And let me explain this in a with a really simple example. When you're hearing music through a door, it sounds a lot more dampened. It sounds darker than it does if you were to be listening to it directly. That door, and all doors, all objects, things have what's called an attenuation coefficient. So depending upon the density of the thing that a sound wave is passing through, it might hold up some of the frequencies, and ostensibly it turns those down so that when you're listening to music through a door or through a wall or from a distance, you might hear the lower frequencies because they're capable of traveling through that object, but the attenuation coefficient is such that it will slow down some of the higher frequencies. Everything has that. Our hands do as well. If you're hearing an aggravating noise and you cover up your ears in order to try to mute the sound, you're attenuating that aggravation using the attenuation coefficient of your hands. A really scientific way to explain that. But in a really important way, all of these ways of thinking about attenuation pays attention to the travel of a sound, the travel of a signal of the track that you're working on, preparing it to go into the next, preparing it for output so that the signal sounds the way that you want it when you're mixing. And if you're hearing a lot of aggravating noises, then trust the coefficient of your ears. Okay, have fun.